Welcome back to the podcast. In our last episode, we talked about the importance of self-reflection before getting into a relationship. Today, we're talking about something just as essential: communication while in marriage or in a relationship. We'll discuss practical tips, common challenges, and ways to create a space where both partners feel heard and understood. So let's get into the discussion.
Now we're going to talk about communication.
And communication is a tricky thing because based on how you've grown up, the trauma that you've experienced affects how you will communicate.
Exactly.
If you grew up in a violent home and maybe your dad was quarrelsome and abusive, you are going to be an aggressive communicator.
Yeah, that's a very real one, and it reminds me of back home. We had a neighbor. I think the man was well educated. He was in school. He had this job, renting a nice house. But the lady he got married to, apparently it seemed okay from the quarrels I used to hear them. Like anytime I would hear them complaining next door, it's like she hadn't gone to school or she didn't complete her studies. So he looked down upon her, and then I remember she was shouting that, I can even burn all those papers. I can burn all your papers. What? Like she was complaining. She was shouting like, your papers don't mean everything. What about me? What about my feelings? Why don't you also take me into regard? Yeah, so that's like when you're talking about communication and the aggression, most people, I think when you achieve a certain status or level in life, you think you're above everyone, and then it becomes hard for you to like communicate properly with your partner.
That's true, but there's also the other side of it, which is the passive communicator.
Yeah, so with passive communicator in this sort of context, how I grew up was my dad was more of the aggressive communicator, and every time he would communicate about something or a sort of repetitive issue, I would take it really badly, but also at the same time, I didn't like the way he would communicate about certain things. It would be probably like quarreling in a sense. I didn't really like it. So the way I grew up was, I grew up with a tendency to avoid such communication types. So I grew up thinking that way of communicating is really wrong. So I fell into the other category of just passivity. So a person will communicate and then I'll just be very angry about something in a sense, but not knowing that how do I say no, or probably I became a conflict avoider. So every time, let's like me and my wife, so let's say my wife's communicating about something, and I feel like, this is going to turn into some sort of conflict, and then we're going to do a quarrel. I'm like, no, I'll just keep quiet, and I won't speak my mind in a sense.
Yeah.
And that has that affected us, especially in our very first year of marriage. I think they say the first year of marriage is one of the most difficult. So you're getting to know who you are in a sense with this other person. You're getting to see your skeletons that you never showed in the very beginning while you guys were dating, right?
Yeah.
So I remember this one particular moment when she was communicating about something, and I froze. Actually, my tendency is to freeze, in a sense. So my tendency is to freeze, and I just kept quiet, and then I didn't know what to say because I felt like if I'm going to say something, it's going to lead into more conflict.
But what's the problem with that, with being quiet and not communicating?
Because your boundaries are going to be overstepped. For example, if maybe we are having this conversation and you've said something that has hurt me, but I'm not going to tell you that it has hurt me, but it's hurting me on the inside, but I'm passive about it. The next time I'll be avoiding you and you won't know why. And so you want to love me, you want to be in my life, but you don't know how to because I haven't communicated to you that, okay, this offends me, don't do that, so that you can know how to love me better.
And also it builds up over time.
Yeah.
And it comes out in an ugly way.
Exactly.
And one of the ugly ways it comes out is passive aggression. So because of my passivity, I became passive aggressive, right? So I would maybe not perform in certain areas. right?
Yeah.
So anxiety builds up
Anxiety, yeah.
because of something that's non-related issue, but then anxiety now builds up, and then you can't, let's say, talk about something, or probably she might ask maybe to do a request for her, but then I might not do it as well, in a sense, right? So that leads to passive aggression. So because of one thing that's been not resolved, into something else, and then at the same time, so you're going into that sort of cycle where that person is constantly trying to communicate about something, but then because of boundaries have been stepped, right? You cannot communicate about your boundaries, so you will sort of like, I would say, in quotes, just take a little bit of some revenge by not doing something that they are just like asked you to do. Almost like the same way, like when you're dating, there's some people have noticed that when they've quarreled, someone will intentionally come late for a date, and they'll not talk about why they came late. Right?
Oh, hey.
But exactly.
And you don't.
But,
sorry, I was late. And at the end, it ends there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that whole communication bit is very, very vital. And the problem is that, we go to school and we're not taught about relationships. We are taught how to build a career, how to, do this and that, right?
Yeah.
The theoretical aspects and some of the practical aspects.
Yeah.
But imagine if maybe there was a course, maybe there's a course unit, or maybe there's a subject on dating and relationships. I think our communication styles would be better in our marriages if we learned that. And also the problem is it's also passed on. My father was probably spoken to like that, right? And then it now affects me. And then I affect my wife, and I affect my children. It's so, it's like conduction. It just rapidly spreads so easily. And because of the traumas and all these other things that happen in between that whole communication bit, when you get it wrong, you easily spread it. But also if you get it right, you also easily spread it as well.
Absolutely. And just to emphasize that point that you've mentioned, most people think that being aggressive is the bad one and then the passive is the good one. No, assertive is the right way. So we all want to aim towards being assertive. An assertive person can communicate clearly but calmly that their boundaries have been stepped over, not with anger, not with revenge, but in a calm way, but also asserting their boundaries. I do not like it when you do this and this. It makes me feel this way. And I would really appreciate it if maybe next time you could do this better like this. That is assertive. It's not aggressive. Like, what's wrong with you? Why would you do that? Like, do you have a problem? Assertive can be abusive, but also it's not passive. Who most people think is, he's humble, but then you're just quiet. You're not telling this person that they've hurt you. You're keeping it on the inside. And then it's also not passive aggressive. So I've mentioned 4 of them. Passive, which is just quiet. You don't know how to say no.
Yeah.
You don't know how to say, guys, stop here. This is hurting me. You just keep quiet. You avoid conflict. Then there's passive aggressive, where yes, you're passive. You haven't told the person why they've hurt you, but now you're revenging in a different way in which the person does not even understand. Like he said, like you're coming late because maybe they hurt you, but you're not even going to address the fact that they hurt you, but you're doing things to hurt them. Like it's a whole mess. And then there's the aggressive who's going to be violent, raising their voice loud and not listening, feeling like they're right. And then there's the right way to do it, which is assertive.
And you see, we at the same time, someone will begin asking the question like, what do you mean by being assertive? How do I find the
That's what I was going to ask.
of saying, okay, you hurt me last time. How do I find the right balance without being abusive? Now, for me, I thought that if I spoke that way, I needed to abuse them, or I needed to say something that would hurt their feelings in a sense. Now, for me, that's sort of how my brain used to work in that moment. So I just said, you know what? I want to keep the peace. Let me be passive, right? In a sense. But that at the same time keeps hurting me. Yeah. It keeps hurting her as well. So one of those things that I had to begin practicing was assertive speaking and say, you know what, I don't like the way probably you've communicated to me on this point. I think next time I would prefer you speak to me this way. That way, I want to lose my head and, and then I want to listen to you. So on that front,
is there a way?
Used her,
yeah,
but I've spoken my mind and I've said this is my boundary. So next time I would appreciate it if you did this. So I think that's how we ought to resolve conflicts.
Absolutely.
So understanding your boundaries, because we talked about how you set your boundaries, something that hurts you, and then you say, this hurt me. Can we talk about this, in a sense? Now, because of fear that maybe some people have grown up in a sense, or anxiety, they're not able to communicate that, because they feel like, okay, because probably I have an maybe aggressive parent, they might go aggressive on me.
Yeah.
Or they might also become like that and say, you know what, I will also become aggressive on you. And then you begin uttering out curse words, begin abusing them, like you're stupid, you didn't even do this last time in a sense. Now, that's not the right way to handle things, because at the same time, you're actually hurting the other person. Right? And so when you get to that point where someone's aggressive, you say, you know what, I'm not taking this anymore. I do not appreciate being talked to that way. If you want to have a conversation, then let's have a conversation in this sort of manner. And if they don't, then probably you can say, you know what, I'm leaving this conversation, and then we'll return back when
absolutely
you calm
when we
down,
are both calm,
and then you can have a proper conversation. Yes.
That means you give yourselves space.
Yeah, a little bit of space. Not space for like 1 week like some people.
And not in an angry way, like the way he has put it. He says, right now, I don't think it's a good time for us to have this conversation because we are both, over our heads. Can we return to this conversation maybe in the next hour or 2 hours or later in the evening when we are both calm? Like in a good way, not in a way of give me space. Bye.
But
some people they don't really like tell you up front that let's give ourselves space. Instead, you just avoid the person. You go silent, you avoid the person. Then when you come to like talk on the matter, because you've been avoiding, the person is now angry. Like, you are not talking to me before, and now you're coming to tell me that we talk about this. What?
Because that person acted passively. That is passive, just withdrawing and keeping quiet, and you think you're trying to keep the peace, but it doesn't work out.
How about showing the person? Like, you've hurt me, but you don't necessarily tell them, but you like show them how they hurt you. How you can show them, in my sense, is that I was going to say you come late as well, but
that's passive aggressive. Now that's passive aggressive.
That's becoming passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, you communicate.
Yes.
You communicate. You tell them coming late is a problem for me.
Absolutely.
But then you keep track. I think you should. Yeah. Probably. Yeah. You should keep track. Keep track and let that person also notice that yes, you're keeping track of what's going on there.
Yeah.
Okay. So last time you came late. This time, I think the next discussion, when you're meeting up the next time, you first start from that front of, okay, so this time you came early and I want to thank you for that.
Wow.
I want to first air that out.
Yes.
And then if the person comes late, you disappoint me.
Yeah.
Last time you came late and today you're late again. It hurts me.
Yeah.
You say it in a more friendly manner.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. And that's what assertive communication is. And that's the right type of communication that we all need to attain and gravitate to if we want our relationships to actually flourish.
Yeah. And I think for people to go about relationship, I mean communication in relationships, you should have more like a friendly approach to it.
Yeah.
Most people take it serious. You're going to tell the person, be assertive, express yourself, tell the person what you're feeling, but you're doing it in a way that is seeming angry in a sense. And remember, you're talking to this person's ego.
When the anger is in there, then you are being aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So assertive is what you're describing. It's calm.
Yeah, it's calm.
But straight to the point.
But straight to the point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, straight to the point. Yeah.
And I think the challenge is that when we grow up, like we've said, we grew up in families where people didn't know how to communicate.
Very, very
so
true.
we never learned how to communicate. Our parents did not know either. And so because we are exposed to knowledge now, we are getting to learn, oh wow, we've been doing it wrong this whole time. And now we have to like start learning afresh how to communicate the right way. And it's not easy.
Also on that front of communication, what's most important on your transition, whether maybe you're overly aggressive or you're passive aggressive or you're passively, or you're a very passive communicator. The most important thing to start with is how do you communicate with yourself? Because a person who communicates with themselves in a very aggressive tone might have a way they speak to themselves. A person who communicates in a very passive tone or passive aggressively might have a way they also treat themselves, right? For example, my wife, when we were coming here, Mark was telling me about a story about when she was younger, how she loved certain things. For example, if she saw something in the supermarket and she loved it, she would tell herself, no, I don't need this right now, right? And then she would hear about her friend who has a birthday party, and then she would go and buy it for that person. So in that sort of context, she didn't love herself well enough to say, no, I want this thing, I need it. No, I want to reward myself and say, you know what, Lisa, this is something that I love. In a sense, now for me as well, I also reach a position where I feel like I didn't deserve, let's say, doing something. So how I used to communicate to myself is I used to beat myself up a lot. So if I messed up in a certain area, I beat myself and say, Martin, you failed here. You need to be better. But then I would literally continue beating myself up, and it affects how I also function in other areas of my life as well. So if you can first speak to yourself and say, you know what, Martin, you failed here, but that's okay. We'll make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So what am I going to do to not so that doesn't happen again? I'll probably do things better. I'll say, okay, maybe I can read about it. Maybe I can talk to someone about it and maybe seek advice in a sense. And then next time it happens, and if it happens again, I won't beat myself about it. I'll be like, Martin, it's okay. You made a mistake. That's all right. But at the end of the day, like, you've got this, love you, you've got this. So it first begins by having self-love. So how a person communicates will show you if they actually have self-love, if they know themselves well enough to know that they actually love themselves, right? And then it will translate into the assertiveness that we're talking about. So when a person says something like, you hurt me and I didn't like that, and it really got me so pissed off and so worked up, and then maybe they even begin spitting certain words against, like curse words against you, or abusing you in a certain tone or manner, you'll be like, oh, I understand. I'm so sorry about that. I actually didn't realize that actually what I did made you feel that way. Right? So you put yourself in their shoes, because you put yourself in your shoes before and say, if I was also emotional and I got so angry about something, I got so emotional, I would understand, like, this is not the person that is in this state all the time. I know them to be a campus, but right now they're angry, they're being emotional, and they're just speaking. You're like, you know what? It's okay, I understand how you feel, right? I did this to you and I didn't realize that happened to you, or how you felt how I did that. So what I'm going to do next time, I'll do this. But I'm so sorry about what happened. Please tell me more, right?
Yeah.
Rather than someone saying, oh, you're so stupid. You're even more stupid. Right?
But,
so
there's some...
Because I have self-love, I'm able to understand that in this moment she needs love, or in this moment they need love. So you, rather than receiving words and then reflecting and then throwing them back at them, you condense. It's almost like a filter. You receive the dirty, and like an air filter, all the air comes in that's dirty particles.
I think this is
clean ones.
This is what is most like talked about. Like when you go to a therapist, they usually try to get you to understand yourself, because most people don't understand themselves.
And
You're trying to communicate with this person, but you don't understand yourself. But that's also another reason why most aggressive people are very, like, they're easier, they're very open to change if the person communicating to them is also aggressive. Going back to my neighbor, much as they would have quarrels, after some time, like, they would go like a month or two without complaints, but then it will surface again. But because she learned how to be aggressive towards him, so sometimes it'd be like, okay, we have had an intensive like quarrel right now, let me calm down, and then after like 2 or 3 months, maybe another problem will come up and they will go back to quarreling. But anytime she gets aggressive with him, she will be aggressive, they'll be yelling at one another, but they'll calm down, both of them will calm down. And I think this is something that is very evident in like families where like they're two varying bodies. One person is successful, the other person isn't, and you're both trying to like get yourselves on the same level so that you can live with one another.
But yeah, actually, that's how most families are. People are different.
Most.
Yes, because the husband is different, the wife is different backgrounds, coming together. But I wanted to echo what he says, that if there is no enemy within, the enemy without can do you no harm.
The enemy outside can do us no harm.
The enemy outside can do you no harm.
It's an African proverb. If there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. What does it mean? That if, let's say, right, she says a certain word to me, in a sense, so the enemy within, so if I am the person who beats myself up, I'll receive that word and say, no, I shall say this, yeah.
Like it's me saying, hey Chris, you're a white man. And that's an insult. I'm trying to insult you and tell you you're a white man. But like, you're not a white man. So like it just slides off,
Yeah,
But if on the inside you feel like I might be a white man, then it's going to actually hurt you.
She has told me, like, she has told me I'm a white man.
Absolutely.
Oh, Chris, you're a very annoying person.
Yeah.
Okay, I know it inside me, but now someone telling me is where the problem comes.
Exactly.
And I think that's the thing. Most people who are aggressive, they know it deep down that this is not good.
Yeah.
But when someone else tells them, that's where the problem comes.
Yeah.
That's where they start now becoming expressive and like being angry, because they have always told themselves that, yes, I'm like this. But now someone affirming to them that this is, you're like this. That's a problem. They don't take it in easy.
And that's why we are saying, before you even begin to think about...
Understand yourself first.
Exactly. A relationship, understand yourself. Walk a journey with yourself. Yeah. There are two types of being single. There are two types of singlehood. There's the singlehood where you just casually say hi to a girl, greet her and move on, chat casually, not getting into anything. And then there's this singlehood where you're like, I'm not even talking to any girl. It's just me and me. So whichever singlehood you are on a journey with, it is so important. That single life is so important because it's where now you get to discover who you are, take time, go swimming with yourself, have those internal conversations, asking yourself, but do I really like swimming? Or maybe I prefer karaoke, so that you go for karaoke if you prefer that, discovering yourself, loving yourself, so that when someone comes in, it's easy to give that love.
Communication isn't just with someone, it's with yourself as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
you
true.
need to learn to love yourself, and that's the most important thing that you could ever do for yourself. That's the most important thing that you could actually give yourself in any relationship. There's something that I learned in my dating phases. I learned that my ability to live with myself alone is going to affect my ability to live with someone else. If I'm comfortable just being with myself as I am and loving myself, then I will also translate that love easily to my wife. And we've both quoted each other about our years of our marriage, right? Where maybe she's been in a place where she's not loved herself well enough, then she cannot love me. I've also been in that slump where I would love myself.
That's actually how people get their self-image, because of the environments you surround yourself in. That's how you create an identity for yourself.
Yeah.
You being aggressive, angry all the time is because of the people you are around, like where you grew up. So it's very important that you sit down, reflect, think about your actions. Yes, you've had past encounters with partners and they haven't gone well. Now, how do you change? How do you go about changing that? But perhaps what I can add on here is, because people are going to work every now and then, they don't get time to sit down and talk to themselves, understand themselves. Instead, they just go with the flow. Okay, my boss is stressing, my wife is stressing. You know what? This woman, let her go. Let her go. You're not sitting down to understand yourself and at least keep the relationship back together. And then years later on in the future, when you're getting older and older, you're now alone. You're now alone. You don't have a partner. I didn't want to talk about myself in this sense. I didn't want to bring about my own story, but things are not really that well on my side from my family perspective. My dad right now is staying alone because of these traditional ways. Failure to communicate. He's old, but no partner. And women in the family has had many partners, but there's no partner right now. That's the thing. Before he was just communication wasn't that good, but he was facing work, so most times we just focus on the work and ignore the partner. And now where have things ended up? So you might be avoiding this person and putting them away, and even potentially letting them go, because you think they're irrelevant right now, but later on, that relevance of the partner is going to surface. Because from time to time, we talk with him, and he's talking about how trying to get her back, trying to get her to come back home. But before he wasn't concerned. Now is the time that he's now concerned, but she's gone, and she doesn't want to stress and bring about those traumas.
Yeah, and that's really, really difficult for you to have to grow through. And that's why we at Lila Haven, we provide counseling services, and we also get to do this therapy using art. So art helps even those people that cannot communicate well to communicate through the art piece that they're drawing. They can find a way to reflect internally into those feelings. And if you want to get to know more, you can check out our website at www.lilahaven.zantu.com and book yourself an art therapy session.
And Martin has been talking about reading a lot. You said there's a book that you've written. Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
So actually, my wife wrote the majority of the book, so she was the main author, but the co-author did. So it's called Love in a Post-Pandemic World. It's right now it's on Amazon. It's about $5.99, so $6 basically, 21K Uganda shillings.
Yeah.
So if you are particularly interested in getting to get to that level where you want to understand about relationships, just buy that book off of Amazon, Love in a Post-Pandemic World, written by Martin and Lisa Tume.